guys, it's Kelly here, and this is my first video for Marker Pop, so I'm super excited about that. I'm going to be using some W+9 products. I'm going to use Happy Mail, Going Places, and then the landscape borders and dies to create a fun little scene with distress inks and Copic markers. So I stamped all of the images in Memento Tuxedo Black ink because I am going to be doing Copic coloring and that's Copic friendly. And then I am, if you watch my videos, you know I'm a cheapskate. Oh, here I just wiped away that little line. I took a wet baby wipe and wiped away the line on the bucket of the balloon so my bunny's arm could hang over the edge, and I'll go back and edit it later. Anyway, so I use copy paper and Tombow Mono Multi Glue to do my masks, and I had a request from someone to leave this in how I do them. So I squish out the glue, I take my finger, I push it out to the edges, I do it especially all the way out to the edges if I'm using distress ink because I don't want them to lift up on me. And then you have to be careful because if you put it down when it's wet, it's permanent. You're not getting it back up. But if you wait until it dries, then it's repositionable. And I just check the sticky on my hand, on my fingers before I lay it down on my card, and never had an issue. Here, I cut a piece of copy paper to the size of my card base, and then I cut a mask for the grass. I used the die, I think it's supposed to be hills, but I used them for clouds, to cut a mask for those clouds. And then I saved both pieces. You're going to need both pieces because at some point you're going to have to mask the sky. Well, I should say I thought I was going to have to mask the sky. I fought with that thing and then I didn't care anymore. So there you have it. For the sky, I used tumbled glass, and then I used salty ocean, and then I used mermaid lagoon, but just like on the very top edges. For the grass, I rubbed on twisted citron and then mowed lawn. That's it. Those are my two favorite greens. And here you can see I'm like just trying to put the mask back on and then peeling this off to reveal the clouds. And then at some point I decide they started moving on me. That's what happened. So I used some tumbled glass just to add a little bit of blue to the bottom edge so it wasn't just flat white. And that's that's going to be the background. I used the small flower from, which one's it from? Help me. Come on. Happy Mail. It's from Happy Mail. I use that to stamp out some flowers. I'm not concerned that they're not masked. Here I'm going to draw back in the bucket portion, and I felt like the line width of this pen was a 0.25, was not, it was too thin for the lines that Dawn used to draw the stamp. So I went back with a 0.35, and I felt like that matched it better. I outline all my images after I'm done coloring, so I have a ton of sizes. The other thing they're good for is this. Dawn left all this wonderful open area in the balloon so you can kind of add your own details. So I decided I want to make it a striped balloon, and I just followed the shape of the balloon. My lines aren't perfect. Nobody's perfect. I think it looks fine in the end, so I'm not really that concerned about it. It's just, a fun little detail that you can add to make your card yours versus the same card that everybody else is making. And I love that. I love stamps that I can use to make them my own. So from here, we're going to start coloring the bear. I decided to go with some light to medium browns. I always start with my lightest color. If I start with my darkest, I get dark so quick, and you can't take away dark. So I'm using some feathering motions just to lay down the lightest color, and I'm still at this point leaving quite a bit of white. I always go back on my second, what's the word that I want here? Hello. The second time I go over it, that's not what I was going for, but whatever, you're getting the point. So the second time that I color the layers, second layer, there we go. Oh my good Lord in heaven. Anyway, I go out farther with my shading than I do with the first time just because I'm scared of just getting too dark. I've done it too many times to myself. So you have to excuse me. I'm a paper turner, and sometimes I get a little off the camera. Usually I figure it out pretty quickly before you've missed too much of what's going on. I apologize. I can't color and look at the camera. I do the best that I can. So the darkest color that I'm using here is E57. And that's just going very little on the edges. And for the arms and the legs, I just did a real quick light line. And then I work in reverse. So I go lightest to darkest and then darkest to lightest because that gives me the best blend. or I feel like it's the best blend for me. Whatever look you're going for, you know, if you prefer to do dark to light, I mean, there isn't a wrong way to color with Copics. Whatever you're doing, as long as you're happy with the result at the end, then you're doing it right. So here we're just going back over, and like I said, I get a little further out with my second layer. I wanted to cry. I wanted to cry. Sometimes I do, but not this time. I wanted to try and create a little bit of texture on the bear. I didn't want him to be so flat. So I went back in after this and used the darkest color in the darker shading and just flicked on just little teeny tiny little flicks of color. And this creates like the idea of fur. It's hard to get a true furry look when you have a black outline image because that fur should be going over those outlines. But I can't cover the fur over the outlines because then it would just like, I don't know, it would look like I don't know how to color. So this is my makeshift way of doing it. I take it and then just add little flicks. I'm pretty happy with my fur that looks like that. And I usually go out a little past the shading just so it looks a little more organic. It doesn't look just like straight line. And I do it with all of my colors, all the way down to even the parts where I've left super light with the highlight. I still go back in with the lightest color and do the little flicks because Copics are translucent. So no matter how light the color looks, when you layer them, you can still see them. They still impact each other. So I decided to add a little bit of pink to his ear, and then we're going to move on to the bunny. I wanted the bunny to appear white, but white is never just white. So when you're coloring white, you're still going to add in the shadows. So I used a C1 and a C3, which are both fairly light grays, to add some shading to him. And I did the same thing as far as the fur. You'll see me here. There's not a whole lot of color. The bunny is tiny to begin with, and then, you know, when you're trying to leave half of it white, there isn't really a whole lot to color. So after I get that base layer, was that not what I was trying to say before? Oh my, sometimes words, they elude me. I apologize. So I'm just going back in and doing those little flicks, and then adding some pink to his nose and his ears. It's the same RV00. Just for, you know, a little pop of color, a little bit of fun. And then you can, when you do, apparently I felt like that wasn't dark enough. I did the bucket and I wanted to add some texture. I didn't feel like the bucket would just be flat color. So I laid down my lightest color, but then I went in with my darkest color and I did like a basket weave pattern. It's super simple to do, just horizontal on top of vertical. That's it. That's the whole idea of the basket weave. So I did it in my darkest color so that it would kind of stand out on the parts that are highlighted. And then after I did the darkest color, I went back in with the medium color and I did it just kind of all over. I wasn't real careful. And then I added some shading to the side also with the medium color, the side that I felt was going to be darker. Blend that all out with the lightest color. I didn't cover all of it, just enough to blend it. And then I decided, I love rainbow colors. I love color. I mean, I like to color, so it would not be shocking news that I love color, period. So I decided to do a rainbow balloon. I left in, even though it's the same thing, when you're coloring something that's round, the tips are always going to be darker. It's always going to be lightest where it's the widest. So I left in each color because in the beginning I show you what colors I'm using. Now all of the colors will be listed in the blog post, but if you're watching this on YouTube and maybe you know, you're trying to color something or you're looking for a specific color combination, you can always pause it where I have the markers held there and then just write down whatever you need. So I decided to just leave those, to leave all of this in. You can see every color combination I'm using. And then once I get all of the colors on there at least one time, I'll go ahead and just time lapse it because you don't want to watch me color every single one of these stripes. Or maybe you do, but I don't. Sorry, I cut it out. In here for my greens, I used 2 YGs, but then for my darkest color, I used a G05. Don't be afraid to mix around a little bit. As long as they will blend well together. Don't be afraid of it. There's nothing that says that you have to use natural blending groups. You just use whatever works best for you. And in this case, mixing a YG and a G worked best for me. So that'll be the last one that I do. And I just went. I know some people can count, like they could do all the red ones and they could count 5 colors. I always mess that up. I don't. Math is hard. Math is hard, and I always end up messing that up. So I decided I wanted to do those little banners, just white. I like rainbows with neutrals or a pop of black. So I didn't want to pick another color to do them. I'm sure I could have and it would have looked fine, but that's just not what I prefer. So now we're going to start it on the grass. I use the distressing to give me a base color, but then I always want to go back in with my Copics and just create some texture. So I'm just using the tip of the marker and flicking motions. That's it. I mean, I know it looks, you know, when you see people's techniques or you see their final product, you think, oh my goodness, how did she create that? I could never do that. I promise you, it's just flicking the marker. That's it. That's all I'm doing. Just drawing lines. And then I'm going above the horizon line to kind of make it look more natural. Going back in with my medium shade, not all the way to the edge, but pretty close, because that YG01 is super light, and I wanted it to look like they were sitting in like a sunlit field full of flowers. So I didn't want to get that horizon line too dark. The last, again, using the G05, it looks pretty dark when I first put it down, but once you go back over and put those YGs over top of it, it really does blend out. So yeah, I thought these little flowers would be so cute, and I wanted my little bunny to look like he was coming in and landing and seeing his friend, you know, because in my world, bunnies fly around in hot air balloons and they go visit their bear friends in the woods, and yeah, it's a happy day. Who wouldn't be happy if a bunny showed up in a rainbow-colored hot air balloon? Seriously. I mean, I would just be thrilled. I would also probably videotape it and put it on YouTube for everybody else to see. Like, it does exist. So I just go back through and blend out all of my colors, so that way everything matches. Now where the bear would be sitting, the grass would be matted down, so I did go in and add a little bit of shading underneath his cute little rump there, just because I felt like that area would be darker. Later on I'll go and add more shadows. So these souffle pens, this is my I don't want to mask little teeny tiny things cheat. It's a gel pen, but it is like an embossing gel pen, so it's raised. They dry completely opaque, which means I don't have to worry about the green in the background, because it's not going to show through once it's dry. After I colored in those flowers, I added in some clusters of flowers, and then in the background just single dots, because it would fade out. You know what I'm saying? If you were looking at the field, those flowers would fade out as they got further away from you. Here I decided to use some W's just to add some shading. Like I said before, I wanted the bunny to look like he was landing, so I wanted to get a shadow underneath that basket so it would make sense, like he was coming in. I gotta be honest, I'm not too terribly good at shadows when it comes to scenes and knowing like what those would look like or where they would go. So I'm working on that, and practice makes perfect. You know, I am coloring here. I'm coloring right over those little dots. I have heard people say that if you color over gel pens with your Copics, it will ruin your nibs. I have not had that problem, but I'm not a Copic expert, so please don't take it as gospel. That's just what I do. If you're concerned about it, don't do it. So the shading on here I felt like wasn't as dark as I wanted it to be. I didn't feel like it was really lifting those little banners that were on the balloon, so I decided to go back and add a little bit more in. When I am done here, you're going to see this is so, I'm sorry, this is just how I stamp. I liked it, but I wanted a little bit more color. So I decided, oh, here's where I remember that I didn't fill in the center of the flowers. So go back in with some yellow and just adding those little dots in. But I wanted to add a little bit more color, and they have these cute little butterflies in the Happy Mail sentiment set. So after I stamped my sentiment, which I think is perfect because if a bunny showed up at my door, it certainly would be Happy Mail. But I wanted to stamp some butterflies, and they're so teeny tiny, and I could not find my teeny tiny little acrylic block. So what I did was stamp them with my finger. No joke. I used the same Memento Tuxedo Black. I stuck, there I am. It's happening. I just flipped and turned and stamped two of the butterflies. I really liked the addition of it to the butterflies. But that's pretty much the card. I did outline my images and add some sequins, but that's pretty much all of it. So thank you for visiting me, and I hope you found something to inspire you, and that you have a wonderful day and come back and visit us here at Marker Pop. Thank you.